All right, well, let's go ahead and we're going to get started here tonight. Just share a little bit of what we're going to do and how we will proceed tonight. We are recording this so that others that may not have been able to be here can at least go back and watch what's going on. It's not live streamed, but it will be recorded. So, with that said, and with the setup that we have, if you have a question, you can ask it, that's awesome, but I need to repeat it into the mic, that way it gets onto the recording. Because otherwise, if everybody's coming up to use the mic, then we have to wipe it down every time. And so, Sandy made a list and just handed me the list, so that's helpful. So thank you, Sandy. Anyway, so that's kind of the process that we'll go through tonight. I've got some preliminary questions to warm us up. I'll move to these questions that have been given to me, and then we'll open the floor up to other questions that you may have. And again, just be patient with us as we repeat the question to make sure the recording has it, and do that. So I'm going to invite us to a moment of prayer as we gather together to discuss this. Let's pray together first. And so let's take a moment and pray. If you feel like praying for us, then please stand and do so, and then I will close us in a moment. Let's pray together. Father, as we have gathered together in this place, we want to honor you, and we want to just be mindful of you in this moment. So God, continue to guide us and shape us today. We were reminded from your word about your name and your kingdom and your will. We pray for those things tonight. We ask you to guide us through this time as we ask our questions, as we seek to know more, as we seek to build our knowledge of Markus, as we continue to move forward in this process. Father, I ask that you would bless he and Lexi as they continue to work together, as they love each other and minister together, they serve together. And Father, that you would give us discernment on every way. So Father, we thank you, we love you, in Jesus' name, amen. All right, Markus, why don't we'll go ahead and start our time if I can figure out how to operate this thing.
Squeeze.
I'm not strong enough. Why don't we start, if you would, and this is a couple of things that the Personnel Committee asked you as well, but I think it'd be good for us all to hear. If you would, let's begin, but would you share your testimony with us?
Sure. Oh, this mic is really good.
I told you.
You weren't lying. 21 years ago, I said, hey, Mom and Dad, what's a Christian? And they told me, and we were in, I think, our duplex in Bell Chase. And I don't remember that answer, but I remember going to their bedroom, and we talked about it, and we prayed, and I, confessed my sins, and I asked that Jesus come to my heart. And then after that, I was picking with something on the wall. I just remember that part, and it always stuck with me. But from that point on, I was a Christian, and I raised in church, and every time the doors were open, I was there, which is mainly still true to this day. When I was about 13 or I was 14. I was 14, we were at camp, and I had a realization of, I'm not living my life to the fullest. I'm not doing everything I can to be the best Christian that I can be, and so I formally rededicated to not only for myself, because I can make a decision for myself, but to let everybody else know that this is something I'm working on. And so I rededicated my life at 14, and now I'm 26.
Why don't you share with us your call to ministry?
That's funny. It also happened at camp. They really wear you down, let you analyze yourself. I was 15 years old, and we were at camp, and they're doing the call on one of the nights, and it's like, come on, Dad, you need to make a decision. And I ended up at the front, And I was like, I'm a Christian, what am I doing? And I was talking to the person that helps you out, and they're trying to help you figure out why you're down there. And, you know, my life has always been about music. I've been in children's choir since I was this tall. I mean, Glenda, you know. And actually until now, music has been a big part of my life. And at 15, like, was when I really realized and felt called to, this is something that I need to share. This is something that I need to do with my life. And, you know, from then on, you know, I was already in the praise band, but ever since then I've been a part of, you know, a worship team or a praise band. And that calling has really kind of organized my life a little bit. When I backtrack, every big moment of my life has had some form of music as a part of it.
How would you define worship?
Worship is personal between you and God, and it can be an outward expression. It can be internal, you know, congregational worship when you come to church, but, you know, also worship with your daily life. Worship within the church setting, most people think of music and the sermon. And in that aspect, it's not mine. It's where your heart is at while you're singing the song. It's where your heart is at while you're listening to the sermon. And so where your heart is at really depends whether you're worshiping or just participating. So worship to me is actively participating in the praise of God.
How would you define success when it comes to the worship position, the worship pastorate? What is your view of what makes a successful ministry or a successful opportunity?
As a worship leader, you have the opportunity every Sunday to guide the hearts, to open up, to make people more comfortable within the service so that they can receive the message or just, you know, something from the song that day. Success in this job is hard to define, but I'll try. For those of you that can't tell, I am smiling under here. You just don't know it.
We can tell by your eyes.
So success within this job is not being a distraction, not taking away from the service, not making it about me, but making it about God and allowing other people to see that, to kind of point the direction to, it's not about what's happening up here. Like, this is what you're hearing, but the point is up there. And success in this ministry is getting everyone to be looking in the right place.
Okay. As we all know, as many of us know, COVID has created a number of issues. And not the least of which, COVID has created issues with having a choir just because of the spittle and the issues of singing and all of these things. What is your plan? First of all, what's your thoughts about having a worship choir? Secondly, and kind of with that, what's your plan if you were to be in this position? What's your plan moving forward given COVID and everything else that we're having to manage? How do we do that?
Firstly, I love choir. That's my job, is to teach choir to 6th graders currently. So just flat on the table, I love choir. I would love to have a choir at 9 o'clock. I think it really adds to the service. But obviously due to COVID, even at school, I get about 20 minutes of actual singing time with my kids, because you have to let the air die before the next class, and all the precautions you have to take, double mask, a plastic face shield, trying to keep the kids safe. So it's just living that every day. It is a tough thing to do. I fully plan on having a choir when it is safe to do so. Just personal experience, I had COVID, didn't know it, and I talked to Larry for about a minute and a half, and he got it. So I don't want to be the reason that the church gets sick. And so when it is safe to do so, absolutely, let's have choir, let's get together, let's sing, let's help lead worship, absolutely, but just when it's safe to do so.
Okay. This one you and I have discussed before, but I think it's important in ministry life and in every facet of life. There's always conflict, and conflict management is an important part of life in general and in ministry life as well. I know you and I have had conversations, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but you talk a lot about, let's just have a conversation. Would you kind of discuss with us your thought pattern behind that and how that affects your conflict management?
I would say 7 times out of 10, any conflict that arises is because of a miscommunication. So when you stop and have that conversation because you can say a statement, and it could mean several different things based on how you interpret it, how it was said. So when conflict does arise, you have to stop and analyze that and talk about it. Because, if I'm saying something and Pastor Aaron takes it the wrong way, if we never talk about it, he's just going to keep believing that what I said was how I meant it. And when we get to have that conversation, we get to break it down. That's not what I meant at all. I'm sorry that came across that way. You get to have that conversation, have that communication to resolve the problem. I mean, just being a part of a band, even working with the 9 o'clock service, there's going to be conflict because people have different ideas. You need to talk about those ideas. And everyone has ideas. Everyone has opinions. And you have to talk about it and come to a resolution instead of, just bullheaded, nope, this is what we're doing, and that's how it's going to be. That just leads to negativity and toxicity within the group. Anytime that the conflict arises, I always want to talk about it. You can ask my wife. She's always like, "Give me some space." I'm like, "Well, let's talk about it." So we're learning. But yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to have a conversation anytime there's a conflict. Maybe not right there in the moment, unless it is absolutely necessary. But definitely, hey, I think what I said offended you, and that's not what I meant. Can you forgive me for coming across negatively? Things like that. I always want to have a conversation about it.
I know worship, over the 26 years I've been doing it, worship changes and has fluctuated, and different churches do different things. What is your opinion and thought about solos and ensembles being incorporated into the worship experience? Anytime
I go to a church, or I've been a part of a church, and there's a solo or an ensemble, the intent behind the song choice or the solo or the ensemble is the most important thing. If you're intending it to facilitate a moment of meditation or a time of thinking, or just a moment for the church members to absorb that song and be thinking about other things while just listening, that's one thing. If you're doing it because, hey, look, I can sing, I think that really distracts from the service as a whole. So I think the intent behind it is most important, but I personally love it. Solos, quartets, having a group come up and do something on stage, that's all. I love that stuff, as long as it's safe. But I love it, and just the intent behind it is the most important.
All right, now we'll get to questions from the group, and I'll start with these, and then we'll open the floor up. First of all, Markus, what style of music do you have in mind for the church?
Me personally, I have a very wide variety of music taste. Old, new, acoustic, electronic, and everything in between. So there's always something in a song that I can pick out and like. As far as the church goes, that depends on who you're trying to reach. Music serves the congregation, so that would help decide it. But also, who do you want to be at church? Who are you trying to reach? And who is receiving from that worship service? So I can't name a specific style, because it's not about the style. It's about the intent. It's about the purpose. Why are we singing this song is much more important to me than who wrote it, when it was written, and what instruments are used to play it.
All right. Do you feel that you can involve the entire congregation into your music?
Absolutely.
Well, I'll ask the follow-up question. How?
So, like, have everybody on stage? Because we can do that, but there's nobody out there to enjoy it.
I'm going to add my moment in here, because I think I know where she's coming from on that. You and I have even talked about how do we get more interactive in the things that we do? How do we incorporate? I think that's where you're going with that. How do we get interaction stage to congregation as a whole?
You have to break down that barrier from the risen floor to the ground floor. I'm up here leading, but that doesn't make me a better person than you. That doesn't mean that I'm not worshiping. And we have created this barrier, and I'll just say it. We've created this barrier where the people on stage are more important than the people in the seats, and that's just not true. So every song choice is it singable for the congregation, or do they know it? Can we learn it in a month? Things like that. Those are the types of questions that I ask myself when I'm picking music. Who knows this song? Who's it going to be new to? Does it fit the sermon? Things like that. But the main thing to get people involved is to break down that barrier. You can be reverent and worshipful without being a statue. You can praise God without standing perfectly still. And I think that there's this disconnect when we praise God in our daily life versus in church. When you're praying in the car, you're still praying. When you pray in church, now we have to act differently. I just think that there's a disconnect, and I think the best way to involve the congregation is to break down that barrier of I am more important than the people down there. That's just not true. We're all here worshiping.
What are your ideas on upholding the quality of our music?
I'm a perfectionist when it comes to music. You can ask anybody I've worked with. I can sometimes be frustrating because I nitpick. Quality how, though? Like, is there a specific? Quality is broad.
Sandy, do you have a specific direction you're going with that? How to build and maintain a quality level, okay?
So again, that goes back to song choice. Are we just picking off the top 12 songs and doing those, and then the next 3 months we're just going to recycle 12 more new songs? Or are we picking the songs with intent? Are we doing it on purpose? Are we worshiping or participating? Are we going through the motions or actively being a part of the service? And it's my job to maintain that quality of always thinking about those before we even get to Sunday. What's the pastor talking about? How are the people feeling? What's going on in the world right now? Is there something that we can relate to? I always want stuff to sound good.
Okay, and the last question is, what can we do to make your job easier?
Trust. Not just this church, but a lot of churches I go to, there's always a level of, I know better, but I'm not going to say anything. And this is a really good question. The last church I left, after I left, I had 6 people come up to me at the end of the service and tell me what they didn't like about what I was doing. After I was done, there's nothing I could do to change that. But also, there was never a level of trust. There was always a question are you sure you know what you're doing? Are you sure? Because that's not the way that I would do it. And I think in this position, there has to be a level of trust that you're like, well, let's see what happens. But also, if you have a song that you've been jonesing to hear, let me know. Because there's 1,000 songs, and I'm not going to pick all 1,000. So if there's a song that you really love, I tell this people all the time, if there's a song that you really love, you let me know. I'll try to find somewhere to put it in.
Anything by Lauren Daigle. Anyway, That's all the questions that Sandy gave to me. Again, bear with me as you state your question. That way I can restate it for the camera and for the recording. If it's a long question, I may we'll try to put it on. I'll try to remember all of that. Remember, I'm old, so. Any questions? Does anybody else have a question that you'd like to ask? Yes, ma'am. You just want to give me the list?
Yes.
Okay, we can do that.
Just start here. You can review that without saying anything out loud. But start there. And
If I miss something, let me know.
don't do the yellow ones. Let's first find out the answers to the.
Okay.
It's a process.
We're learning on the fly. Oh, hey, yours is much better than mine, so.
Way better than mine.
All right. You like music. You received a music degree. Teaching the age level you teach is a full-time plus. Why are you here as the interim?
Well, COVID happened. It was D-Now weekend, and it kind of just fell in. But like I said, every major event in my life has had music revolved around it. And there was never a question of, should I be doing this? There was never a, maybe I should. It was just a, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm supposed to be.
All right. You grew up here. During your time here, were they ever singing hymns from the hymnal? Do you take time to sight read hymns to broaden your knowledge? Or are you only having a hymn sung because someone else asked or suggested it? Where is your heart on these kinds of songs and song types?
Before I ever touch a hymnal or touch the music selections I have for the 11, 15, I stop and I pray and I ask, guide me where I'm supposed to go. And, sometimes there are songs that are just stuck with me that I passed on, that I have to come back on Sunday and say, hey, we're going to do this instead. I absolutely go through the hymnal and find stuff and try to choose things that are appropriate. They're sectioned off, which is really nice in the hymnal there for different categories. And I always skip the Christmas one until we get to December. But yeah, I do go through and I try to broaden the scope of songs that we touch, but also try to do stuff that is known by the most people.
Okay. Who here at First Baptist has your ears, what is said? That is, who do you respect and ask their guidance on materials that you might use? And if not here, do you have a mentor or somebody else that you're receiving information from?
You can ask my parents. I'm always going to ask questions. If I don't know something, I'm not afraid to ask. And here, as far as music goes, I mean, I've talked to Larry, Marilyn, I've talked to Jack, and those are just off the top of my head. I've discussed the music with Aaron, Peter, my dad. So if I'm ever stuck or looking for a song, I would definitely say, hey, do you know what's going to fit good here? Do you know something that I could do? But I do like to ask about songs that people enjoy. I didn't cover that on the last part. Because it is important to me, because I grew up in a different time where we were singing different songs. And so I'm not always going to know what was sung. Between the ages of 9 to 14 is the music that you really sticks with you the rest of your life. And I wasn't around. So I always ask the question because there's just songs that I don't know. There was a song that Larry showed me today that I had never heard before. And as far as mentors asking questions, I don't have anybody specific that I'll go to. I think I've talked to Larry most about music selection, but I'll ask anybody.
This question, and to be fair, I don't think I know the percent number other than it's a large percent. How many members or percent are older folks who love the hymns? I would suggest that that's probably a fair amount. Have you spent any time visiting in any of their homes to pick their brains to acquire wisdom about music?
No, because when I started doing this, it was because COVID. But, growing up being best friends with Peter, I did spend a lot of time at Paul and, I'm so sorry, Melanie's house.
It's second mom, that's what it is.
I'm going to be honest, I'm so bad with names. I've been teaching kids for a while now, and I still don't know some of the names. I have to recollect. So if I forget your name, I'm so sorry. It'll come to me. It's not because I don't like you, I promise. Can you repeat the question?
Spending time with individuals, visiting with them concerning their wisdom about music.
Yes, I in their own houses, no, but at the end of services, yes.
Do you plan to attend seminary in regard to God's call?
He hasn't told me yet. I don't know.
Okay. Do you feel it's positive or negative to be a director in a church in which some of your family is on staff?
Well, I think it can be both. For me, it's a real positive experience. It's been good for me. I think it can be negative. I forget the word for it, but when family watches after family more than they consider the right answer for the church, that's when it can be negative. But so far, I don't think we've encountered any of that. And I really enjoy working with my dad, so.
Am I going to the yellow papers? Okay.
He's already answered a few questions, so I need to clean it up.
It's gone to the editing session, so, yes, sir.
I have just a kind of a follow-up question to some of those. Do you have, and who would it be, kind of not just a current mentor, but somebody you admire in church music that you would like to have either the skills or develop the worship like they do? Who is currently in your sights, not just people around here?
Okay. For the recording purposes, the question concerns mentoring or aspirations. Who is it that you look up to or you admire concerning worship and music? Could a question also be who influences you? Yeah.
As far as worship leading, I don't. There's not anybody that I strive to be or emulate. I like the way that Ed did things, and I like the way that Chris was doing things, and that type of formula, pushing the envelope while also staying within the border. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the direction that both of those guys are going. Those two.
Okay. Dustin.
I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Ed. I was going to ask, a lot of us remember the Christmas theater, dinner theater, and passion plays he was involved in. What are your thoughts on that, and perhaps even new ideas you might have?
All right, the question centers around Dr. Ed, when he was here, did a lot of the Christmas and Passion dramas and events, and the question is concerning your thoughts on those.
I am not retired. However, I am all about volunteers. So if somebody wants to take on that passion project, I would gladly be part of it. But again, I have a full-time job, and I don't have the time to put into that right now.
Okay? Yes.
Speaking of time, how much time are you putting in currently?
What is your current time that you're putting in? Renee, you can go ahead.
Let me look it up. I spend anywhere from 18 to 21 hours as far as, currently I spend about 15 hours, but with choir being added back in, selecting music, things like that, it's going to be about 18 to 21 depending on what's going on that week. The most I've spent in a week is 25 hours. The least I've spent is 10, and that's because I have a good team. So anywhere from 18 to 21. Sure. So Sundays, I get here at 7. I run through all the music for the 9 o'clock and the 11, kind of go through the order so I can be on top of things. At 8 o'clock, at 8:05, we have rehearsal for the 9 o'clock. Go through that with them, and then 9 to 10, we have that service. At 10:15, so that everybody can clear out, we start the rehearsal with the 11:15 band. 11:15 to about 12:15, 12:30, and that's my Sunday. And then Sunday evenings, Mondays, I'll spend some time looking through music, texting back and forth with Peter. Hey, this is a song that I heard on the radio. Let's get it done. About an hour, 2 hours picking music for that, and then throughout the week, I spend about 2 hours selecting music for the 9 o'clock, and then I try to spend 2 hours to 3 hours looking at new music, things that we can do just as a church. But then, again, whenever choir's back up, on whatever day we rehearse, because I'm not stuck on Wednesdays, whatever day we rehearse, spend about 2 hours there. On Thursday, we spend about 2 hours with the band, and then any extra time there would be any extra time that I need, just looking forward into the future.
This question is actually for me, so I'll field this one. You can take a drink. The question is concerning a worship pastor or interim music leader. What's the difference? The difference for me, there's a couple of differences. One, an interim says it's not permanent. We're still looking. There's no settling from the congregational perspective. You don't have a settled idea that this is the person. Whether it's part-time or not, the difference of interim to worship pastor is not a matter of full-time or part-time. It's a matter of permanence. And it's a matter of the people being able to understand this is the person, that we can take a breath now. We're not having to continue to search. It's not a matter of, well, is there anybody, when are we going to, this is the person. So to me, it's more a matter of permanence in the difference between the two. Another area of difference, and this is the difference between interim pay versus permanent pay. The permanent pay is budgeted a little higher than the interim pay. And part of that is a level of responsibility and a level of authority. Right now, the responsibilities may not change a lot, but the level of authority in my mind as the staff leader and as the pastor, the authority that he would have in that role would adjust up a little bit because it is the permanent position. Right now, he is an interim, and in that interim capacity, he has responsibilities that he upholds, as he shared with you a moment ago, of all the things that he does. But the authority has not exactly been handed off to him in regards to purchasing things or handling things. That still funnels through me, and I handle a lot of those things. But in a permanence situation, the authority of those decision makings, while we would still have conversations, he would have more authority in the leadership of that. And not so much me having to do that. So I kind of look at it in those two regards, the responsibility, authority change, as well as in the people's heart and mind, it's a state of permanence, and we have settled in on somebody, and that there's a psychological thing that's really helpful for a congregation to say, this is the guy, instead of, well, this is the today guy. There's a difference there that I see there as well. In this question, you also address the idea of full-time versus part-time and things of that nature. Right now, there are a couple of reasons for part-time. One being budget. Being able to pay a full-time person is not in our budgetary opportunity right now. And the scope of need in this today's moment is not a full-time position. Ed wasn't full-time. Now, he worked a lot, and being retired helped, and he put a lot of hours in, and I would suggest to you that Markus puts more hours in than he's telling you, because I know his heart and I know what's going on with that. And so you don't count your thinking time, and there's a lot of thinking time when it comes to this, and there is. And so are we going to go to full-time? Well, we haven't been full-time in this position for a while. And right now in the scope of things, I personally don't see a need for it yet. I'm not saying we can't grow to that, and it someday might get there. And at that point, God would have made that clear to all of us in those moments. All right, so question now is back to you.
All right.
Did you get your water?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Would you do the same thing that you're doing for the same pay you're getting a week, or would you be doing more for the higher pay that the committee has raised it to, moving from interim to permanent? I kind of addressed that, but would you address your thoughts on that?
Continue doing what I'm doing now for the same pay, yes. However, I'm not going to continue doing the same thing. There's logging of songs through our CCLI license that I don't have to mess with right now. There's purchasing, there's budgeting. A lot of that stuff I don't have to touch right now because I'm the interim, I'm temporary. So with like you said, with the new job comes new responsibilities, budgeting, purchasing, taking care of the licensings, things like that. So adding those responsibilities on, would I take the same pay? No. But at the end of the day, it's more to do. Did I address the whole question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I've asked the other question. Okay, anybody else have a question for Markus? Renee's working hard.
So that's some questions for everybody.
If your college vocal teacher were watching you from the congregation, would he or she be pleased with your presentation and prep?
Yes. Presentation with the music that I select, or
Your vocal delivery.
Golfers videotape themselves and then they check themselves. So I didn't know not to be.
Oh, he has a critique session every Sunday afternoon, so.
So I'm just saying, do you ever watch?
every Sunday after, I didn't mention that, every Sunday after church, I go home and watch the services and critique those and listen to them. What can we do with the sound? What can we do with the flow of the service, and work on that thing.
And there's a second thing. Sorry.
Just on it.
Are you just willing to fill the position because no one else stepped up, or is this an obedience and a call from God?
This is a call from God, because like I said, there was never a question, there was never a doubt in my mind that should I be here, should I not be here. This was I was put in the position that I was put into so that this could happen.
Let me address that also a little bit, because I know you mentioned earlier, COVID hit on D-Now weekend, the band was already playing, and it kind of rolled into that. That doesn't mean Markus and I didn't have a lot of conversations about that. And if I didn't already know that he felt a call of God to be in worship ministry and felt a call to handle that, I would not have gone to the personnel and asked for him to be the interim. So there was some conversations about that. It wasn't just well, it's easy because you're already here. There was conversation about that as well. So I think that's important to know. Yes, Glenda? As long as I can hear you.
Oh, you have to repeat it.
All right, the question for the recording concerns if you felt a call of God in your teenage years, help us understand your directional choice, your vocational choice, and your major choice in college to be in music ed instead of maybe music worship, I think is what we're getting at. So help us understand that.
So it was a call to minister through music, not necessarily this is the only avenue that I should take. And so, selecting the major, doing that process. I thought about doing seminary, prayed about it, and it wasn't given to me. It was not put in front of me the way that so I live my life in prayer. Everything that I ever do is I try to be God-led. And anything that has ever happened to me that was supposed to happen, it was right there. The opportunity was there for me to take. Seminary, I looked into it. I actually called seminary and was asking questions. And the feeling I got when I got off the phone was I'm not supposed to go there. And so my call was to minister through music, not necessarily just in this formal aspect, but also through using the music that I create and teach and show these kids and be a role model for those kids to minister that way to them as well. And so I chose music education because that's where I felt God was pointing me.
Yes, not all feel called into seminary. I did, he didn't. Others have felt called and attended and aren't serving. So it's kind of you got to follow God at that point and do what he asks you to do in regards to that. So, other questions? Renee? Melanie?
When I think about choir, and it's not having choir right now, I envision, yes, we can still have choir, we can practice in the sanctuary, socially distant, we could spread out across the stage and sing currently. Do you see that working?
Okay, the question regards having choir in a socially distant throughout the sanctuary for practice, spreading out on stage when it comes time for the presentation of that, and how do you see that working?
So during the summer when we were prepping for school, we had to do a lot of research, and our admin did a lot of research. And one of the things that we found was spittle can travel around the mask up to 9 feet. So that's the minimum distance you want to be away from each other when you're singing. My kids are literally in the corners of the room because half of them are on line only. So to do it safely, because again, I don't want to be the reason that anybody gets sick. And I know that so many people are like, well, I don't care anymore. I had it and I had the bad end of it, and you will care. And I don't want to be the reason, and I want to do it safely. Yes, there are options that we could definitely pursue when the time comes to be as safe as possible. But right now, we aren't even in the facilities to have that right now. I would love to explore those options and talk about that, and not just give it an X to it, but talk about it, explore those options, and see what we can do to get that going. Because I know you guys really miss it.
And right now in the youth building, we don't even have that space. So, because our sanctuary we're not using it right now, but that's certainly a conversation. Thank you for bringing that up. Larry, you had a question?
I have asked on several occasions why Mary or myself have not been able to participate in the strengthening of the music in the second service. It's a very timid, shy approach with the keyboard usage that we have right now. I think Marilyn or myself can add strength to that service and bring a quality from our accomplishments. And my question is, why have we been able to order with that God?
Okay.
We've been here faithfully for 40 and 60 years, which I might add was not even recognized.
The question is from Larry concerning he and Marilyn and their involvement in the 11:15 service. And so, Markus?
No, you asked the question. The first reason was for safety. The second reason was to not overburden people and not to demand too much of people. Holly volunteered her time, and that's why she does both services. The position was already filled in the second service, and I understand your opinion on that. But that was why.
Anybody else? Any other questions? I may be getting texted one. Hang on. Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's so important for every member of the church to participate in every opportunity that they want to be a part of. And we have quite a few people who are very talented in music in this church. So, with that in mind, if we can't start a choir anytime soon, are you open to, as I've asked you several times, in something a little different than what we're doing at this point, because it seems that we just have this, this level of view. So are you open to beginning even now, if you do it, working at, or like before ladies and cycle on Sunday when you were out, and get a master's job on Sunday. Maybe they can sing again, just to have some more variety, is all I'm asking about. So that we can, when everybody wants to participate.
Okay, Marilyn has asked the question, kind of a follow-up from the question that was asked about the solos and ensembles that haven't been used much to this point. What is your plan moving forward in being able to expand the usage of other people in worship and those opportunities?
Yes, you and I have had several conversations. I am open to those, but again, it's within the concern of safety for the congregation. And I know that if I ask, people will say yes. I'm worried that by doing that, they put themselves at risk, and that is my main concern. At the end of the day, that's what I'm most worried about, is losing the church because we were not patient with this. I am open to that, and especially as this vaccine rolls out, absolutely. Let's get people doing stuff that they want to do, absolutely, but within the interest of safety.
Anybody else? Yes, Sarah. The question is about how long you were at the former church while you were at college.
I was at that church for a year and a half, leading worship there, and before that, I was part of the praise team and part of the traditional choir at another church for the previous 2 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Another question, kind of a follow-up, a couple of those back there, wanting to do some other singing but not feeling safe. You have a singing family, and y'all are at home together a lot. Did y'all sing for us?
I could pose that question just to see, but again, that was part of that. Don't want it to become the Warren show. So, not to burden anybody because they do a lot behind the scenes already, but yeah, that's absolutely an option.
Yeah, you don't get a vote on that, Keith. Anybody else? Yes.
What does our traditional service look like to you?
To him? What does the traditional service look like? Oh, okay. What's your vision for the 9 a.m. service?
Ideally, like we've been doing, but with a choir, and a mix and match of groups and ensembles, soloists that have a good intent behind doing what they're doing. every song I pick for the 9 a.m. comes straight out of the hymnal. I was instructed to look into more of the 500s this morning, so I'm going to add that into the rotation.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I like the way that we've been doing it. Singing the songs, going into the sermon, having that reflection time. I like that. I would love to have a choir behind me while we do that. But again, with the facilities and the virus going around. But yeah, ideally, what we've been doing, but with a choir.
Okay, a text came in. What percentage of yes votes would you feel comfortable with to accept this position?
86.
Okay. A follow-up question that was also sent in to me. If either by the church or by you don't accept the position, would you look elsewhere to serve in music ministry?
Yes.
Okay. Brandon? What's the best way for communication to you concerning suggestions?
Well, now that I brought that up, I'm going to make an email and let you all know, and that'll be the suggestion email that I have open so that it's not cluttered down with all my ads and junk mail I have.
We can get Mike to open up an email
Okay. Have it be Marcus Warren suggestions.
or worship at.
I like mine better.
I'll take that under consideration. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? I don't have any that have come in. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so you talked about how you select congregational singing. How are you going to select choral?
All right, the question is, I'm sorry, I have to repeat for the recording.
I forgot.
That's fine, you're jumping at it. I understand. You've discussed how you choose for congregational. How would you go about choosing for choral?
The same process, is you stop and pray, and the intent behind every song selection is the most important. So, does it fit the service? Does it make the choir sound good? Things like that. But definitely the intent behind it. Always stop and pray. And is this the song that we should be singing, or is this just a song that I think sounds good? Things like that. So definitely benefiting the service is the key. When there's a whole library in there, I'll just go flip through them. I know.
Yeah. You can send that into the new email we're going to have, your top 10 choir favorites. There you go.
She wrote them down.
I have some paper if you need to write those
There
down.
now.
So. Okay. I'll reshape it.
Is it hard to go to worship is worship, but going from one style to the next, you have to get into just
I know what you're saying. Between going at traditional at 9 and contemporary at 11:15, what kind of spiritual or emotional processes do you have to go through to transition yourself?
That's a lot of what the 7 to 8 o'clock hour is while I'm here by myself. I sit at the piano and I just chunk through some of the songs. To me, music is music. At the end of the day, a good song is a good song, and it's gonna transverse time. So, we use As the Deer on the traditional and the contemporary because it's just a good song. So for me, there's not a heart change. There's not a mindset change of how I'm doing things, because the idea in both services is the same. Get people ready to receive the message and allow them a space to meditate on that. For me, they're the same service. The song selection is different. That's the only difference for me, because, again, a good song is a good song, and the purpose is the same in both.
It also helps that I'm preaching the same message both times, so.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I should do that. Just keep the songs.
There you go. It'd make your life a lot easier.
Probably not.
No, it wouldn't.